Hello and welcome to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. CVJS and I walk in solidarity and as allies for equality, justice, and respect. Black Lives Matter. Let's stop Asian hate. Let's unite. I'm Helen Pickett, and today I am coming to you from Katzbahn Cultural Park, where I am in an isolation pod working not remotely for the first time with American Ballet Theater. So we are not in our regular space, so I welcome you to upstate New York, Tivoli. Today, we will have the chance to talk to Tamas Geza Moricz, an international teacher and workshop leader. We danced together in Frankfurt Ballet, and we have known each other since 1995. Tamas, hi.
Hey. Hello.
It's so good to see you.
Wonderful to see you, Helen.
Beautiful face. When my memories of you and when I see you again now, you always had the kindest face and such an open, sweet smile. That's my memory of you, and seeing you again, it's exactly that.
Thank you. It's the same how I feel about you. You were always wonderful to me. You were one of the first people that welcomed me in Frankfurt. I remember that you were really welcoming and very sweet and loving, and it was always nice. I always cherish our connection somehow.
That's
really great to see you.
I have one question before I get into the first question. Did we meet perhaps, I mean, this is part of the questions later, but did we actually meet briefly when you were working with Jan?
I think we might have, because you probably came to see the performance with Jan, and I think you came to our dressing room and we said hello. You came to see Tony, and then we've met there.
I think so, right?
And we had one short story that I remember that, after I worked with Jan Fabre, then the first time I came to Frankfurt, I didn't really think to audition to the company. Tony was saying, oh, Billy likes you, you should come and try. So I came to the room and Tony was pushing me to learn stuff. And I was very shy, very intimidated by the whole room. And I remember that there was, I think, like a bunch of people auditioning on the side, sitting on the floor, and we've been doing second detail. And finally, after a few days, I stood up and I sort of started to try to learn something, because it was more of a classical idiom. And you came to me and she said, like, listen, we need this space. Do you mind to do this on the side? And I was so like, oh my God, yes, please go. But you weren't mean at all. You were just like, actually, we need to rehearse. Do you mind to move to the side? And then I was like, oh, no, I give you all the space. And then everything worked out.
Okay, God, it's so funny. You said I was so welcoming, and then, but when you were auditioning, oh.
No. But I think it was the first time. It was like, oh my God, I should really actually listen what's going on in the room, man. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I need to pay a little attention of other people also now. It was not a bad idea, not a bad experience.
Well,
anyway.
Let's move on from there. It did all work out, as you say. Where in the world are you?
Sorry, where
are you right now?
Right now, I'm living in Brussels. I moved to Belgium. I came here to take over the artistic directorship of the Royal Ballet of Flanders with Sidi Larbi-Charkaoui. Yeah. And then I've done this for 2 years. And then unfortunately, it became a too difficult situation to manage. It's a long story, but our colleague, Kathleen ran the company. And then when the company was put together with the opera and the ballet became one company. And then the management and the organizational structure of the company wasn't defined. So there's a very difficult way to run a company. And Kathleen said, no, thank you, I'm not going to deal with this. And so I was the first person who actually fell into that position to deal with the day-to-day reality with that. And I've done it pretty much alone. There was no co-directorship in the sense that I was the only person who was there. So 95% of the company's responsibilities really fell on me. And of course, I've done this agreement with Sidi Larbi, but the work was mine. So it was a very difficult 2 years. And then after 2 years, I had to decide that either it's my health and my well-being is at stake, because I cannot do 4 people's jobs and jobs that I'm not actually, how you say, I don't have the knowledge to do, or the experience. And so I said, no, I can't continue like this.
But what a huge learning experience.
It was a very steep learning curve and a very difficult one, I have to say, but it was a learning experience. I learned that I can manage just about anything. That's all I came out with.
Well, and that is not a bad thing to come out with, Tamas.
No, at the end.
How much you can do. Now, you made a healthy choice for yourself and said, but, you know, okay, but too much, but you actually know, I mean, you know, every experience brings us further, right?
Yeah, it was, how do you say, our years in Frankfurt Ballet, I think, prepared us much better than we think while we were there, because eventually this company, you know, the whole company basically lost almost all of its repertoire at that point. And so I had to really rethink, like, okay, what direction are we going towards? Is this still remaining a classical company? Is this going more towards contemporary works, as it would reflect on Sidi Larbi, who is, of course, invited to do this? And so we had to really define the dynamics, the internal dynamics of the company, of how the dancers can function with each other. There was a lot to do. And then we in fact became very successful, I have to say, because within the first 2 seasons, we've done really exceptional choreographers' works. And we got, how you say, the abonnement went very high, very fast. So there was a lot of good things happening.
Right.
But the internal structure was not optimal. So at some point it was difficult.
Well, actually, that's a part of it, another question, but I love that we started there. But I would like to actually start with what you're involved with now, and how you have been evolving since that period of time, and how is your art evolving, and you know, what are you thinking? What are your next steps?
To be honest, this last period was very interesting, because of course there's so much free time these days with the COVID crazy that there's a lot of introspection. And what I found was that really I am very passionate about teaching and working with people in a manner that I always think that I would like to create a school that's a little bit like the Montessori school of dance, to think about how can you actually apply all of these different ideals and tools that we already know that can benefit a dancer to become a useful and a usable dancer, but in a manner that also creates complete human beings. So healthy human beings without the abuse, without the emotional traumas, and without the self-beating that most dancers really do go through still. And I think it's very much part of a lot of people's journey. And then to come out of it and find a way how we can build people up in a way that they don't really have to go through that difficult trauma. You know, breakthroughs rather than breakdowns.
That's beautiful. Breakthroughs rather than breakdowns. It's beautiful, Tamas. You know what's so interesting? I find that I can't say everyone because I don't know that, but every person that I come in contact with that is in the field, has stayed in the field from Frankfurt Ballet, all of us have that sensibility.
Yeah.
All of us have realized what work can be like in the studio, and then, you know, crediting what we learned at the Frankfurt Ballet, because, you know, Bill gave us so much agency and gave the opportunity to bloom in so many different ways. And I think it is a part of our heritage, because Tony is like that, you, me, Alan, I mean, Francesca Harper, I could, you know, I'm not even naming all the people, but we have this similar feeling about creating whole people, breakthroughs. You know, who are you? What do you have to say? It's so interesting. I love that this generation.
Yeah, we really, really understood. I have to say also that I think we've been a very good, our particular group. I've been there more or less a decade. 8 seasons I've been with the company, and the 2 seasons I only toured with a couple of pieces with the company. But our generation, I also felt like we had such a luck of our group that unified together, and how we supported each other and how we challenged each other. In fact, also that there was really no question of pulling your socks up, but doing your own work. And then really, I got so much support from, I could name anybody, from Anna, from you, from Andrea Talas, a lot of people, Thomas McManus, everybody just kept giving wonderful input. And it was too much input at the time. I also felt like, you know, I was force-fed like a geese, but eventually a lot of it really settled in. And then I came out at a completely different place. And I think our group was in a very good time of history, not just of the Frankfurt Ballet, but of dance history. We had a very, very unique experience. I'm absolutely sure of that we had a lot of agency, as you say.
I agree with you, because yes, we were working with a creator, you know, I mean, look, we did, like, I think he created at least 3 pieces a year. We were
every season,
creation, but the generation around us, those choreographers, it was a huge time of creativity, the 90s, those late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, or even like probably 80s, 90s, right? But I like you, spent 11 years, so just over a decade, and got there in the late 80s. But I agree with you. There was something in Europe. And also, you know, Israel, and there was a lot of interesting, I'm saying it too prosaically, there was just a lot of creativity happening. There was a lot of
it was really in the air, I think. And I have to say that I really always found that, in particular, our company was really truly at the forefront, because what I realized that Billy redefined not just what ballet could look like, but the process of creation. Every single time we started a new creation, the process changed. So whenever I felt like, oh, well, now I got something, suddenly it was like, all of you that you got is gone, because now it's an entirely different experience of how we're going to create something.
And then it was gone too much.
Sorry?
I don't think all of it was gone. I think that it's just, you could, it's just that you had to, and this was what was really challenging and wonderful too, because, you know, it was challenging. You're right. Every process was different, but I wouldn't say that the previous process was gone. I would just say it was a layer now. It was the past. It was a layer. And now there was something new.
Else.
So it was like this.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that's true. It wasn't gone, of course, but what I've always felt like, you know, the speed of us discovering and generating these new ideas and these absolutely new ways of seeing what dance could be. They came at such a speed that I, especially in the first season, I had no way of integrating new information in. You had to function almost immediately. This is something that I found very interesting, that my education did not prepare for this at all. Like there was no way that my school could prepare me for this. And this is something that I really think of, that is very important, in fact, in today's environment, to say like, well, be curious, be open, be really, how you say, it's the difference between saying like, oh, I want to do good work, but I don't want to do too hard work. And we were like, yeah, it's too hard work every single time. And it was really mind-breaking and body-breaking, really difficult work, physically as well as mentally, what we had to go through. And I think that, you know, today the tendency is like, well, let's just protect everybody. Let's just not push people too hard because people are delicate. And I'm not saying that we should create an environment where we have to abuse people, but how you push people and how you tune them, fine tune them, help them through each breakthroughs is a very important thing. And this is something, just to get back to your previous question, I'm very interested in how we can define this and how we can create methods and much clearer definition of what can truly help a person to become an available performing artist, not just a good dancer, but first a usable dancer, a useful dancer, then a performer, and an authentic, good performer, like a graceful performer. That's what we want to see.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just have one more comment to how you were describing things. Yes, the journey in Frankfurt. Well, first of all, it's the only journey I know because it's the journey I was on.
Yeah.
Right. And I was surrounded by truly inspirational artists.
Yeah.
I mean, our company was extraordinary, and it's the journey that we knew together. And the thing, yes, when you're in it, because see, this was something I really also appreciated. A state of change usually equals a state of chaos, but I'm not saying that the chaos is bad. Yes, it is it's sometimes a minefield. I mean, you're going like,
yeah, really, it was. Yeah.
But geez Louise, what you learn on the other side is like, I thank the stars for that journey.
That's opportunity.
I'm not saying it was always easy, but that's what you're saying. Being an artist, there is too much emphasis on making things easy. Easy doesn't create a mindset of wonder.
Yeah.
The wonder comes from figuring out that journey. And yes, sometimes, now I want to change, I'm like you, I change, the semantics. I don't want to say it has to be hard, but you've got to do a lot of digging, and you've got to commit to the idea that things might change your perception of yourself. And
that things aren't what you expect. Things aren't going to go well. Yeah.
Break the habits, So I agree. And it's really, what I love is to hear how you want to go forward with this. It sounds beautiful.
It was interesting because, it did seem, you used the word chaos, and it was never, how you say, never chaotic in a way where you're like, oh my God, I'm really just, you want to throw the towel in. Not at all. You were constantly in this state, like, how do I define what is it that I can give to this? And that's what I find very interesting, that we were never feeling like, God, I just can't do this. I can't deal with it. You were frustrated every single day, but we were always like, yeah, well, pull it together, get up, figure out something that you can work forward. And we all had this drive. And this, I found, like, I think that is what created our company, that you could look left, right, see solutions, find other people's ways of thinking, and little by little you could build your own version of your understanding of what's happening around you. And so this chaos, it was chaos in a way, but it was also such a drive and such a helpful push for us. I really, yeah, like you say, I'm completely at gratitude that I could be a part of that.
Yeah.
I have never, after Frankfurt, I've never seen it ever again. But working with Jan Fabre was also a very interesting experience, because Jan also creates an environment where you're absolutely free to try anything. You know, people will pee on stage or do whatever they need to, but they don't feel embarrassed. And to create an environment like this is not an easy thing, where you feel safe to try those things.
And trust.
Yeah, and trust.
And finding yourself within that.
Yeah. So it was fantastic. And then, of course, it gave us all different opportunities to find, okay, well, you were great at theater, and suddenly you're like, okay, well, let's go. And you went quite a few steps further with it. So amazing. It's also an amazing journey that somehow you could open yourself to a completely different avenue. And for me, teaching came.
But Tamas, you said exactly what it is. I feel like perhaps the biggest gift was that we saw the possibility that we can really choose to try anything we want to try.
Yeah.
And some of it will work and some of it won't, but we don't have the fear. And I think that's what you're also saying with your school. Kind of erase that fear and recognize that it's choice, possibility, agency.
Yeah.
You know?
And that you are responsible for it. At the end of the day, there was nobody behind you really. Well, you created something, we could use it, great. If you created something we couldn't, it wasn't there. So that was your responsibility.
Yes.
And every one of us understood it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the fun, really.
That was hard sometimes.
Yeah, that was hard. Yeah, that was tough. Often, yeah, when you're like, oh, we just worked on this for how long? And sorry, that didn't make it. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, that was not fun.
So Tamas, you were, so maybe we go a little bit more into this, but if we don't need to, we don't need to. But I'm going to say the question. You were the deputy director of the Royal Ballet of Flanders, as you explained, in Antwerp for 2 years, you said.
Yeah. 2
seasons. How did your previous life experience, if you want to go into this more, if not, it's fine. How did your previous life experience as a performer, as a teacher, influence that leadership? What were your specific examples or inspirations in how you approached that position? And then I have two more questions, but let's start there.
Well, to be honest, this whole thing to come to Antwerp came out of the blue. I received a call from Sidi Larbi one day, whom I knew already for a good decade or so. And I had a lot of wonderful conversations with him where I explained to him how we worked in Frankfurt Ballet. So all of these influences he very much applied in his own work. And so I could see, of course, as an outsider, like, yes, my influence is very much in his work, because he tries to define a group very much, which what I explained to him. I also taught him some of the improv ideas we worked with, and he applied those in his own work, which is, I found wonderful. I thought, like, how great that he's using these things that I'm telling him. And so he was offered to take the directorship, and I received a phone call from him that, would you like to be my co-pilot in Antwerpen? And this was after Kathleen left. And so I thought, what a great opportunity, I'll join you. And I also felt like, well, I am actually very well positioned to have that job, because I knew exactly where Larbi wants to get with his artistic work. And I also understood what kind of company would work for him that is able to do his work as well as a repertory company. So this was my preparation again, that I had a very good example behind me of like, well, that's something as a dancer I've already experienced. So I know exactly what I'd like to see in the group, what kind of company dynamics would I like to have, and then to find the artworks, the actual choreographic pieces for that company, what would challenge the dancers? Like, how do you build up a how you say, an introduction, say, to the dancers to say like, well, you've been dancing classical ballets, but now we are going to do much more contemporary work. So to go from a point shoe down to rolling on their neck in a city library work, that's a very long way. So I had to figure out what are the pieces that can also mentally help these dancers to adjust, to say like, well, this is actually valuable for us. And so I thought my main influence was, I said like, let's not do Göteborg, let's not do Kolberg Ballet, where we start with young choreographers and bring them in first seasons in the company, but let's start really at the top. So let's go from Cunningham to Graham, Pina Bausch, let's go for Forsyth and all of the big names, the solid choreographers, Ohad Naharin, so the dancers can experience these works. And for the audience, I don't have to worry so much because I don't think anybody's going to complain about a Graham piece or a Cunningham piece if they are really well done. And luckily enough, we could get those pieces because, of course, once Bill Forsyth is part of the game and you can say we have Forsyth pieces, everybody else is happy to come. And so I that was my influence, to say my main artistic influence was really to define what type of works in the first 2 seasons redefine the internal dynamics of the company.
I mean, it sounds amazing, the choreographers that you got there.
Really, we really had amazing, I mean, it was also, we had Nijinsky's found, we had Spartacus from Yuri Grigorovich, from Marcia Heide, we did Sleeping Beauty, so a very, very diverse 2 seasons, which was insanely difficult to pull together. I have to say that's why I actually decided at the end that I cannot do this without meaningful help behind me, because I could not be the artistic director as well as the managing director of the company. And I simply asked, I need a managing director and somebody who's responsible to overlook all the finances. And that help wasn't given to me. So I said like, well, I can't do more than that. But this is what prepared me, basically being in our group. I just understood what it feels like to be in a group that's supportive, that you can really feel responsible for the work, that you don't have to rely on your ballet master, but you know how to take care of qualities and help each other in the group. So that's what I wanted to set up, and it's still there. That's what they're living on still.
Amazing. Yeah. So I guess the last part of the question is, what were some of the primary learning points from this experience that you had? Yeah, I think, what did you take away?
From Antwerpen?
Yeah, like what were, I mean, we really hit on this before in the opening, but you said that one of the things, or the biggest thing you took away, is you realized that what you could handle. Like all the stuff that you do. Was there some other thing that you took away from it as far as what you learned?
To be honest, there wasn't much positive experience because it was really just work, never receiving any credit for the work that I've done. It was all handed over to CD Larbi, which I understood from the get-go that this is how it's going to play out because I'm the co-director. But you know, they called me the co-pilot, and I was like, well, the pilot isn't on the plane because he's somewhere else flying another plane, a few of them. So it became really too taxing. And what I understood is that you have to be responsible for your own well-being. That's something I definitely learned, that throughout, when you're put into a position where you're responsible for 50 people's jobs, you cannot quit. So I have to follow up and go until it's at a certain place. Then I could try to ask for help. And when I look back, I understand that, yeah, well, you know, I really don't think anybody else could have done that job. People would have quit at least a year before. But then, I don't know, I tried and asked for help and hoped for something, a better outcome, but it didn't come. So that was that. And then you move on and you learn to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's something I learned. You have to.
There you go. A huge life lesson, right?
Yeah, it was really, and not a fun one either, but it's something that I have to live with.
Yeah.
And
Had you danced Graham or Cunningham before?
I
Why did
learned,
you choose those? Why did you, because I asked that because it's a huge pivot
yeah,
for that ballet company,
yeah,
which
yeah,
you took over.
yeah. Well, the first thing was because, you know, I knew Bill was into Cunningham big time. I've never danced a Cunningham piece. I took classes, as so did Graham classes. I've never danced a Graham piece, but I really remember how foreign those things felt to me in school. And I thought like, well, they're really incredibly valuable experiences, even if it's just for these few weeks. They will give the physical experience, and especially Cunningham, when you have to have your attention completely different than normally you do. I thought those pieces were gonna give a very solid, great experience right at the beginning. And luckily we could get them right at the beginning. But that's why I thought, let's do this, not something different first. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So a little history now. Sorry, did you want to say something else?
no, that was it. That was it. I wish I danced then. I really wish, huh? Really. Yeah, that would have been fun. But yeah, it was great because I got to watch some fantastic rehearsals. All the stages were really, really amazing. So they were wonderful to watch, and also see the different approaches, how they enter a room and take care of their pieces was very nice to see. Very foreign, very, very different approaches, but really great. Yeah.
Wow. So you graduated from the Hungarian Dance University. While in school, what performances or dance works made you realize you wanted or needed to dance? When did you realize that dance needed to be a part of your life, I guess? And then when did you realize you perhaps wanted to be more of a contemporary dancer rather than a classical dancer? And did travel, was that a part of the thing that pulled your heart?
Well, to tell you honestly, I'm one of those people who I never seen a dance performance. I grew up in Hungary in a very small town. So the only dance I would see in Eastern Europe would be like some TV shows from the DDR that had dancing in it, but I've never seen a ballet show or anything like it. So for me, dance came because I did gymnastics for a couple of years, and I was quite good at it, but I wasn't good enough. And I ended up dancing with the girls. I was always with the girls stretching. So I could do the splits and the back bends and the forward bend, backward bend. And eventually there was an advertisement on TV about the ballet school in Budapest. And for me, this was a way to get out of the city that I was living in. And I thought like, well, Budapest, that's a big city. I already been to Budapest and 11 years old. And I thought, let's go, let's try. And when I was at the audition, I realized that it's a big deal because there were hundreds of other kids. And because of my facilities, I got taken into the company, into the school. And the school was difficult. But during school, it was already quite clear that I was not going to become a classical ballet dancer because I don't have great feet. My technique was good enough, but not great. I was small. So it was quite clear that I probably won't have a great career in classical ballet. And in the meantime, this was the 80s. So of course, all the pop music was happening. And so that's what I was really interested in Prince and Madonna and all of that, and looking towards the West. And so that was really the drive and the pull that I was like, well, make dance work. And I was somehow good enough. I don't think I was great, but somehow I kind of got through it. The school was very difficult because every 6 months they would select and let go of students. So even making it school through the 9 years, of course, was quite a challenge. And then oddly enough, I ended up getting jobs here and there. And then one thing led to the other. I got to a good place. And then through this journey, I learned really that dance gives you so much more than on the surface you think it does. And that's what I really fell in love with, this whole idea of, well, through the body and through movement, you can really find your authentic self. You can understand so much more about yourself. And that it doesn't need to be abusive, it doesn't need to be self-abusive, that it can be really a beautiful journey. And this is still what fascinates me more than anything. How do we create this enriching journey for people? This is I wanted to say also, I looked at your interview with Elizabeth Corbett, who brought me to parts some time ago. And I love what Betsy says about this thing, because she also has a very clear vision of how to actually create that environment. She did already, she set it up. It's the same thing, yeah.
She's quite something. Again, one of those hugely inspirational people from Frankfurt.
Yeah. She had a lot of wonderful things to say and very interesting views of, okay, this is how things work.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my journey. And then through this, I learned more of, okay, I'm okay, that I don't have to beat myself up all the time, and I can actually function somehow in these things.
Yeah.
And may I ask you, how did you get into dance? May I ask the interviewer for a quick second?
Oh man, Tamas, you're gonna laugh. So I too was in gymnastics. Yeah, but my parents put me into gymnastics because I was bouncing off the walls. I had so much energy.
Okay. Yeah.
This kid needs to do something because she's driving us crazy. But then, you know, it wasn't my thing. And then my mother, who was amazing. I mean, she did everything. At the time, we were listening to the radio station. We just moved into a new house, and she was actually laying tile floor. She was doing it. Yeah, she's really quite an inspiration also. And on the radio station, they announced that if you were the 8th caller, you could win 2 tickets to the Nutcracker in San Diego. And she called, and she was the 8th caller.
Amazing.
Said, let's go to see the ballet, Helen. Wow. I was like 7 or 8. And of course, you know, I was like, what is this magical world? You know, the Nutcracker with all the, you know, the music and all the colors and the fantasy of it, right? It was a world to go into.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I told my mom, I was like, that's what I want to do. So they took me out of gymnastics and put me into the Saturday ballet class at the local park.
Wow.
And I took, you know, and that's, you know, I had my little bun, and that's how I started.
Amazing. Very interesting. Because so then you really seen this other world that opened up to you, and you're like, okay, that's this whole world is what you want to enter into. See, I never had that vision. I never seen it before. That was the interesting thing for me, to be in it and discovering it. I've never seen it from the outside.
That's right. That is quite extraordinary, Tamas.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
But, all the same. Beautiful.
We got to the path. So your professional career started with short periods in Győri. Is that how you say it?
It's Győri Ballet. Yes. Győri Ballet.
In Hungary. The Kibbutz company in contemporary dance company in Israel. I love Israel. You're lucky you got to live there. I've always loved visiting. And then before that, you had, you did that before, and then you joined a year-long world tour with Jan Favre and the Trublin Company. Mm-hmm. And as a part of Da Un'altra faccia del tempo, I love
Right.
Italian so much.
Okay.
This is also where you met Tony Rizzi, right?
Yes, yes.
So do you feel that these, and I know you had other experiences, I just took these three. Do you feel that these very different experiences also prepared you for a decade with Forsyth?
I'd
Like
say Yain.
experiences, did they contribute to, you know, your, that you could step into this other world? Because these three experiences are very different, but they
Yeah.
also encompass a lot of, you know, what we did also with Bill, theater, ballet, and
Yeah.
so
I wouldn't say that it prepared me. It kind of, it was so foreign when I entered into that room.
okay.
You know, Helen, I really stepped into the room and I was like, when are they going to start rehearsing? This doesn't look like rehearsal to me. I couldn't figure out what was going on because it looked like everybody was having fun doing things and like, what's going on? And then eventually it somehow emerged that people were actually creating and making work. And then, you know, there were counts and pieces, but to me, it was a totally foreign experience. And what I've done previously, Jan was the closest, of course, that gave me an inkling. But Jan's environment is much more secluded. The outside world is kind of cut out of it. In Frankfurt, the outside world was constantly coming through it. We had so many visitors, we had so many different people coming in and going out, and it was nonstop every day. There was this influence also from the outside coming in. Jan doesn't work like that so much. He's much more selective about who is in the studio, how concentrated work is. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. It's still one of the formative experiences that I have, but then Bill was, nothing could prepare me for what happened in Frankfurt Ballet, especially not through the first, say, 5 seasons. Then I was just trying to swim and not to drown. I really felt like that the first 3 years.
Wow. But you know, you were trained classically, and you performed works by Yoshikiri Matsek, Sapporo, Keshigawa, of course. Did that.
But that was in Frankfurt already.
Hans van Manen, Robert North, Kurt Joos, Crystal Pipe, Tony Rizzi, Jacopo Guadani, Jonathan Burrows, Ryuichi Sakamoto, among others. I mean, this is a big list of people that of choreographers that you had experience with. So I know that Bill and Jan greatly influenced your trajectory in life. What other choreographers from these really gave you a sense of, you know, elements that you wanted to take with you along the journey? Perhaps all of them gave, because they're all amazing people. So
all of these did really, because they are also diverse and so different. Ryuichi is, of course, a composer, and there Tony was the choreographer. Tony brought me into a project with Ryuichi Sakamoto, which was an interesting project because Sean Emio and myself, we ended up dancing together. Sean was in New York, I was in Frankfurt, and the concert was happening in Tokyo. It was called, the opera was called Life. And it was the first time that they used the internet live during a performance. That's never happened before. So Sean and I were the first people who danced with each other. But just to answer your questions, you know, everything adds to the pot. Every single experience helped me. For me, everything was new because, you know, in Hungary, I didn't really see contemporary dance. We could see blips and pictures, videos here and there, but it wasn't so available. For me, like Macmillan's Manon came to Budapest at some point, and to me, that was a modern ballet. I was like, oh, that's so modern. She has a short skirt. She's not wearing a tutu. I'm like, how contemporary. So that was my idea of, that's modern ballet. So and it sure was. And very modern thinking, though, how he created the piece. He's a wonderful choreographer.
I love that ballet.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good ballet. It's good. It's a great story ballet, which I also love.
Yeah. Yeah, you like stories as well. I know that you like to build.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I read a lot. Also, I love. I have a very visual sensibility. Also, I like my visuals to be stimulated, and of course, if you read, you see things, then that's always stimulated. So I like very much storytelling and
So
storytelling.
this is not in not in the questions, but I still, we're going down a nice path. Do you have any like postmodern artists that you, let's say painters or, you know, in that vein that you go
Oh
to?
God, there's truly too many to name, but I love. You know, now I'm in Belgium. So now I found this beautiful period. It's called the Occult Symbolists of Belgium, which is this wonderful period right after the First World War when the world was changing. They had to redefine all the ideas. So Freud was coming along with these ideas of how dreams are part of our reality and how hypnosis can release traumas, and all of these ideas came around. And then this is also, there's a visual language to that, which is painters. It's called there's a Ferdinand Knopf is one of them, then Jean Delville. So these painters are actually, they're incredibly, I find them fantastically influential right now, but it changes, you know. Sometimes you get influenced by other people,
Yeah.
but right now I'm really into them. I like to look at their works. Yeah.
It just came up. That's beautiful. And also two artists that I'm going to look up after this interview.
Yes, please. You'll like them. I promise you. You'll be inspired. Yeah.
So Tamas, you have a thriving freelance teaching career and
Yeah.
workshop as a
Yeah.
workshop teacher,
Yeah.
that's taken you all over the world in professional companies such as Coolberg Ballet and Sydney Dance Theatre and numerous schools, just to name a few. Venice's Biennale Arsenale della Danza, Impulse Tanz in Vienna, KNUA, Korean National University of the Arts in Seoul, Maremma University in Istanbul, and Sao Paulo, Belo Horizonte in Brazil. Your method sounds like, now that I'm listening to you, but when I read it, it reads also like a holistic approach, which you have explained, to imparting knowledge, the whole person. You said it, the Montessori, you know,
Yeah.
way, that holistic
Yeah.
approach to
Yeah.
giving knowledge. You say, I'm going to quote you, radically empower and enable dancers to function in any demanding environment. I mean, that's beautiful. So you've spoken about it, but can you take us through some of the specifics of your method? And how do you incorporate multiple life art reimaginings into that teaching practice? What other things might you bring in? Like, do you tell them to go see art exhibitions, or does that, you know, so maybe
Yeah.
some specifics.
I mean, for me, you know, there has to be an ability to see and to listen. This is to me the most important thing. This act of listening. This is something that I learned of how to select, what has importance, what is it that is useful to focus on and put effort into, and how to work with intention. So my beginnings are always the same thing. First, understand what precision is. So how to work with precision and how to work with intention. If you can do those things, then the world is your oyster, because then you can define and articulate everything else. So I always start with this, okay, let's just say, what is precision? How do you can bring precision into your body? How does that actually work? And it really is a process. I have to say that it's a quite difficult process, in fact. A lot of the time,
What is it for you? What is precision? How does it start?
I use different exercises, but for example, one exercise would be like, say, okay, keep the shape of your hand like this, and we move with this, that's the shape. and don't lose it. And you know from practice that the moment you don't look, your hand changes. It's the same thing that, you know, dancers learn to point their foot, and that becomes a habitual thing in their body. But if you put the same focus anywhere else on their body, they cannot do it. I'd say, like, well, you can point your foot with no attention to it, but you can't keep your fingers together because it will go like this in 2 seconds if you don't look. Then somehow your focus, how you apply your focus, you cannot apply it from your feet to your hand. What's the discrepancy? How do we work with this and say, well, focus just on this until this becomes habitual? Or, you know, the maxim is you work not until you get it right, but until you cannot get it wrong. So practice until you cannot get it wrong. Once you have that, that knowledge retains in your body, it remains there. And we know it from practice. You've done it just as well as I have. So you know how to build this up, but this isn't part of any curriculum in schools. And what I notice is that I have dancers come to audition to me in Antwerp, and that really I could throw so easily. I could give them an exercise and I could see that they cannot follow the simplest instructions because they are unaware of their full physicality. They cannot work with precision, and then they cannot work with intention. So this is where I start from. Okay, let's be very clear. What is precision? And then what is clear intention? And clear intention could be, say, reach towards something. And it's such a simple thing to do, but the moment you see it, they can only illustrate reaching. And you really have to physically take them and show this is what reaching is, especially reaching your maximum range of reach. And you have to physically be with dancers, say, no, you're not even a quarter of the way there to really reach. You're pretending, or you're making an act of performative reaching, or you're really just not using the correct sequence of movements. And so I work with these particulars first and foremost. And then, of course, we get much more elaborate and much more free also. But these are the basics that I really believe they need to understand. That's where we begin from. And that's also, I think, why we had all of these incredibly how you say, brave dancers that could take risks, because you could be precise and you could recover and be precise with the intention and allow things to fall, to recover. And you know, we've done really wacky, dangerous dancing that looked wacky and dangerous, but it didn't kill us.
Well, that's the thing, because when I listen to you and I'm like nodding my head because it all makes sense to me, what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And what I keep coming back to is the word presence.
Yeah.
You are dropping yourself.
Yeah.
So absolutely right.
Yeah.
Even this, talking to you all the way in Europe, you and I both have an intention of listening.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, you and I are both dancers that were lucky enough to be versed in this as young people with Frank. Yeah. But I work like you very often with just being present.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And yes, like you, I found my ways to teach people into presence.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where grace comes from. This is what I believe, that authentic presence is graceful. It doesn't matter what it is. You know, the grace doesn't come from the shape of a body. It comes from really what you do with it. How do you use your intention? How do you express whatever is true and honest within you? And an honest intention reads as authentic presence. If it's how you say, it's illustrated, we can tell. Usually you can tell. So this is very important. Yeah.
Well, that is, your students are lucky. It's something.
They love it. I have to say that whoever I work with, they're usually like, you know, I can see the little light bulbs going off always. I can see people, and a lot of people I have helped that I could see that they have difficulties with themselves, of trust issues, or not feeling safe in their bodies, or feeling judged for the way they look. And then once they change their shift, their focus, they don't have time. They don't have time to judge all of these internal dialogues because they are busy with being precise or intent. And that's a very liberating thing. That's
So
a very liberating thing. And I've seen people become true artists because of that. They could click. You know Shelby Williams from Flanders Ballet? She's the biscuit ballerina. She started this Instagram account. So Shelby was one of my students. She came to a couple of my workshops, and the Shelby that I've met first in the first workshop is not at all the woman that I see today on stage. And she did, I think, 3 or 4 workshops with me, and every single time she jumped and jumped and jumped until she became Shelby. And suddenly you're like, okay, there you are. Now you can get a job. And she did. And she's done Pina Bausch's role in Café Müller. So that's as far as you can go as artist.
wow.
Yeah, she's done very well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's, yeah.
Well, Tamas.
That's what happens when you can really learn to be how you say, authentic. That's what she did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's freedom. It's such, I too like seeing the light bulbs going off. It's very gratifying.
And I think you as well as I am. You know what I mean? Maybe you enter into it from a different, slightly different viewpoint, but you have as much as I do.
I think it's just different words. I think the ethos.
The essence of it is the same. It's true.
The ethos, where we're coming from, again, our history, what it gave us. And we're 2 examples, but you mentioned Elizabeth, Betsy, Jennifer, Alan, Thomas,
Tony also, Ellen, all of them.
You know, all of, Francesca Harper.
Fantastic performers.
Kathleen Roman. I mean, the list. I'm sorry.
We have a long, long list, really.
Brian Reeder. There's just a lot of people I'm not naming, but amazing people. Amanda,
incredible. The thing is that, Helen, the amazing thing is that, what I remember is that everybody in this group had their own thing somehow. And I was like, how is it possible that, for example, Andrea Talas, or Tony, who has nothing looks right about him, nothing. And then what comes out as a performer was just so mind-blowing, because he could authentically be in the moment, play with the audience, play with his own body. And so it was so inspiring to see this. And it's really such a fun part of our job to guide people to that place.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And a responsibility. Yeah. Well, we're at the last 3 questions, which I ask everybody. It's gone so fast, but the first of those is in supporting and building a more equitable dance community. What do you work with as some of the daily practices to make this a more equal, equitable place for dancers?
Look, the only thing I can honestly work on is myself and my attitude, and not just attitude, but my reactions. I learned that I really learned how to react better to situations and to people, that I don't have to, if I don't get what I want from one person, doesn't mean that I have to be bitchy about that person, doesn't mean that I have to be anyhow. But how you say, again, the larger environment that we are a part of, you have to support. And no matter how and where my place is in that group, I have to sort of embrace the whole of it and be an example within that group. And I try to really do that. That's okay. I grew up a little bit, because when we are younger, we are very easy with our flippant comments. We are very easy with our dismissive things. And I learned not to do that as much as I used to, or at least check myself on with who am I doing it in what context, and really try to be a lot more generous of people processes of like, well, maybe you're not there yet, but maybe you are at a different place in your journey, and I hope you're gonna go somewhere farther.
Yeah.
So I try to really just work on my reacting, how I react to people and how I react to other things that I see and how I communicate. I think that's my contribution always. These days I really try to do, yeah, be smarter than I used to be when a younger
That's
dancer.
the nice thing about age, right?
Yeah, you learn that it's okay to watch a little bit of how you treat people and how kindly you treat your colleagues.
Exactly. The kindness. Yes, yes. So I have to say this in every single, we're into our 70s now as far as these interviews. So I say it every single time. But do you have right now a spontaneous, something that comes up, favorite memory from your creative life?
Oh gosh. Yes.
Spontaneous because there's so many, right?
Oh
But
God, yes. But I tell you, I remember so much the terror that I had the first time we went on tour to Stockholm, because I was thrown into second detail. And I had no less, I had a little solo in second detail, but we went to Stockholm and we arrived to Stockholm and suddenly the stage was like this, which I have never I'd never danced on a race stage. And I was like, oh my God, there are turns in my solo, I'm gonna die. And if this wasn't enough, my former school director showed up. He was teaching in Stockholm. So he comes to see the show and he's like, oh, Tamas, you're here. I'm so happy. I will see your show. I'm like, oh my God, no. And then we went on stage and on the general, Kathy was placing us and she says like, well, where are you in the hula? And the hula is this theme in the dancing. And so, well, I'm actually sitting in the back on a stool. And she was like, no, I don't think so. The hula is the end when the groups are moving through each other. I was like, the what? I've never seen that section, let alone learned it. I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, well, just go and follow Pascal. And I was like, who is Pascal? Which one is Pascal? And so she just yanked me, threw me behind Pascal. And I was trying to follow Pascal. And I was sure I was going to get fired. And I was sure that everybody's going to know that I don't know any of the ballet, but somehow I got through it. And then the next day, the premiere was very good. So that was baptism by fire in Frankfurt Ballet. That's what
I think we all experienced that at some point.
yeah.
As far as, yeah.
Not once. I think we all experienced it a few times of like, what section are we doing? What is it? Yeah, those 12-hour days in the theater. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I ended up putting a wig on my head, remember, and pulled out a microphone for one of those.
Yeah, and you had to, gotta save the show. Remember that?
Yes.
Gotta save the show, and we did. Yeah.
So the last questions, you've given us so much about, how you teach young people how to live a creative life, but do you have some like shining example for yourself, something you could share about living a creative life?
It helps you to grow. It really gives you a genuine sense of achievement within yourself. I think that's what it does. It gives you this incredible sense of like, well, maybe you're not rich, maybe you're not famous, but something you achieve, you will feel achievement. And that's such an important thing, to feel that you feel accomplished. No matter what endeavor you'll take, if you put effort into it, this effort will give you a sense of accomplishment. It's a very interesting thing because effort doesn't guarantee success, but effort guarantees accomplishment. And that's something that I learned, and that's something that I think is worth the journey alone.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It is worth the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny,
Yeah.
I was talking to someone recently that so many of my great memories are about the work that happened in the studio and on stage.
Yeah.
The process.
Yes. And this companionship that, you know, we built up such a companionship that you will never forget, because it's such a rare opportunity in life to have this that a group of people can be in a room together and they can be themselves and spark each other up and create. And whether that gets seen or not, I think it's good if it gets seen, because of course it gives some kind of evaluation to it. But the process itself alone is worth it already. You get so much out of it, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm very hopeful for the new generation also, because now we are in such a different epoch of how we see dance. We see, I think, a lot less on stage. We see a lot more online, but the creativity that goes into those short videos is unbelievable. I'm seeing incredible things, and so that's also inspiring to see that.
Yeah, it's really an exciting time to live in. I feel like the pandemic, I'm not going to talk about the horror and all the hardship of it, but art can and does flourish in times of hardship, because
really true.
We figure out new avenues and not just new, but we learn how to describe everything that's going on, because artists describe how they're feeling and describe their environment, and it's very exciting time.
Yeah, and the language gets written while we're doing it. The language gets rewritten, which is also very fascinating to see. Like, wow, now we are in this epoch, now we're in this area. It's just fascinating to see. Yeah. And how we can find our place into it and apply ourselves. It's great. It's great stuff.
Oh, Tamas, what a wonderful interview. It's, I get to see my friends with this and have a really good chat.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah.
It's just thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Do you have a website, or are you on Instagram? Is there a way that people can find out more about you?
To be honest, I have barely any internet presence. I've never put, I'm usually when I work, I'm busy working, so I don't really put clips or things online. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, of course. My Instagram is Tamas Khan or Tamas Artist, but there's not much about my work. My work is through me. I need to be present for it. So I go to a lot of schools, I go to a lot of academies, and I sometimes do freelance workshops. So those I usually post online, so they are available to people to come. And if anybody's interested, I'm more than happy to have people to come join me. I think this summer in Berlin, in August, I'll try to do an open workshop. So that I'll post soon. If that
okay. Well, then I'll tell people, then I guess it's through your Instagram that they can.
It will be there for sure.
Good.
Those infos are always there.
Good. And so you will read a tiny bit about Tamas in the bio that accompanies this video. We have new guests every week, and our next interview will feature Dana Ruttenberg, director and choreographer of Dana Ruttenberg Dance Group, L4, L5 Productions. This is my thanks. I want to thank Gracie Spina, the amazing co-producer, intern extraordinaire, little Wonder Woman, Gracie. I want to thank our dance community that's given me so much. And Tamas, you lovely, lovely, insightful human being. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I can't wait for people to hear about you. And I just wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to see you. And the same, I wish you a lot of success. And I hope people come and see a lot of more of your work also.
Bye.
Wonderful to see you. Bye, love.